My name is Eva Wollmer, and I am project leader here at LEAD, where I work with the early startups and also with our venture arena, a matching event that we have. And with me here today, I have Åsa Glavich. Hey, Åsa, how are you today?
Hey, I'm fine, thank you.
And Åsa is a business coach here at LEAD. And she has a background in HR. And that's why we will talk a lot about people today and why the people are the backbone of a successful company. So that's going to be a really interesting seminar.
Hopefully.
I can also say a few words about LEAD now in the beginning. Until everyone has dropped in. LEAD is a business incubator which works to help companies grow faster and safer. And so we are basically accelerating the growth of our startups to become scalable growth companies. And we do that by offering them different sorts of directed resources like business coaching and skill or training programs, our network, our community, and much, much more. We are owned by Linköping University and are located in both Linköping and Norrköping, where we have about 45 member companies at the moment. And the Startup Talks series that we have, which this session is part of our work to inspire more people to take the step into the startup world, but also a way to create a knowledge exchange and a way to learn from each other's experiences and stories. And we have these seminars every first Wednesday of the month. So the next one will be in the beginning of April. But if you have missed any from before, or if you don't have the time to see the whole session today, you can watch them on our YouTube channel afterwards, which is lead.se. And now it's 3 minutes past. I am really excited for today, so I don't want to miss any more seconds that we can use to talk. Once again, hey and welcome everybody to the Startup Talks called People, the Backbone of a Successful Company. And we will talk about topics like how does the human brain work in different social contexts? Why is that important for the team? And how much does the team matter? Can it really affect the company's profitability? And we will also touch upon topics like how can we learn to communicate better? Before we start, I want to say that you can ask questions if you want. There's a Q&A section below, which you can use for that. And we will take them up during the interview or in the end of the interview. So really take this opportunity because we want Åsa to answer all of the questions that we have. But yes, enough about that. Now we really are curious about Åsa and her experiences and learnings. So Åsa, can't you start by telling us some more about yourself and how you ended up at LEAD?
Yes, of course I can. First of all, I'm a real extrovert person. I love people, and I've always loved people. I'm really fascinated by people. So that's kind of why I turned to, when it came to university studies, to behavioral science and later on HR. So I've been working my whole career in HR with all the HR related questions and issues, such as, for instance, recruitment or labor law and salaries and all that stuff. But the longer I worked, the more I realized that the things that really caught my interest is about people, leadership, people, team interaction, team development, and stuff like that. So I've worked mostly at really, really big companies in technical companies. with, for instance, at E.On, the energy company E.On, and before I came to lead, I worked at Saab Aeronautics, and I got to be a part of the fantastic development of the Gripen. So that's my background. I said I'm an extrovert, but I also love analyzing stuff and reflecting on stuff, mostly when it comes to people. So that's also why I kind of turned my eye on a company like Lead, because here I get to work with that stuff and also with helping people to create results. And that's the best part of the human interaction, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's super interesting. So is there a difference then between, like, if you compare like the big companies and the companies at Lead?
Well, yes and no. First of all, the big companies, of course, they have processes and structures and stuff like that for everything. And that's a big difference because the small companies at Lead don't, of course. So that's different, but the people in the companies are the same. People are the same everywhere. I think, though, that the companies in Lead have more of, since they are very small and also has their own, they get to decide on how to handle their own businesses. There is both more challenges, but also more opportunities when it comes to setting up everything so that you can have a good culture and good situation for yourself and your employees.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us some more about the different challenges that you have experienced in teams in, for example, startups?
Well, yeah, there are, of course, you are really dependent on each other in the small companies that is in the beginning of their company journey. You are very few people, so that's a challenge because you depend on each other, and if something goes wrong, there is a huge impact on the business and the operations that you're in. There is also, I have experienced, you start your company with perhaps with friends or with colleagues from another context. We work with deep tech companies, so often there are scientists that might have been in different relations to each other before. For instance, someone who has been studying for a professor and the two of them start a company together. So they can kind of bring another dynamic into their company situation, the friends dynamic or the professor and student dynamic. And that can be challenging when it comes to setting up a effective team and work together as colleagues and as peers.
How is it that can, like, what sort of challenges can that create?
Well, you look at each other in kind of the same way that you did before, and you are used to interacting with each other with different behaviors and communication styles, for instance. And the context that you're in when you start a company is perhaps completely different. And maybe you kind of just go on interacting in the same old way, but that might not be the best way in the new setup. And that can be, of course, sometimes you don't even notice that is what you're doing, but sometimes you do notice, but you can't really speak about it because it's awkward or strange to say those words. So you just carry on. That's I think that's pretty common, actually.
It's like when you come home to your parents' house and you kind of become the same person that you were when you were a child.
Exactly like that.
Are there any, or like, what is the worst thing that could happen in a situation like that? Because you say it's a challenge, but like, what exactly can that mean for like startups?
Well, that can actually put a brake on everything when it comes to business development, for instance. You get really caught up in those feelings of conflict or disharmony. So they kind of lock the whole situation. And I've seen quite difficult situations like that. When you're in a conflict or a discomfort and you can't think of anything else. And the things that are fastest, that gets affected the first, is that you have real difficulty to kind of listen to each other in a positive way. You lose your ability to be curious and interested and wanting to know what your colleague are thinking or feeling, because you're caught up in defending yourself, kind of. And there is reasons for that, and those reasons are located in our brain. Brain is a really good thing to know much about when you are in business or in any relations, for that matter.
And I know you know a lot about the brain, and we will go into this in a while. But before we do, I would like to know, like, why did you, or like, how did you become so interested in the brain? Do you have like a specific reason for that?
Yes, I do. It's from my personal life, and it's from that me, like many others, have gone through relationships that has been difficult. And then I started to get interested in how to find a more kind of scientific, well tried out perspective into that. And that's when I found the quite new research, 10, 12, 15 years old research on how the brain actually works when it comes to contact with people. And of course, since it was in my personal life, you're really motivated to learn and to understand. So that was the spark that kind of set me off in that direction. But I realized, okay, this is relevant to any relationships where you need to communicate and do good stuff together, not only personal relationships. So I immediately started to use that knowledge that I found in my work, and that was kind of a deal breaker. Actually, I think that is the way that I work almost always now, from that perspective.
So it all goes back to the brain and how we react to situations.
Yes.
So you said something about that, like when you have these relationships where you have some sort of conflict, that you can't, like you interpret everything in like a bad way, kind of, or that you are like influenced by that. Is there like any research behind that? And do you have like an example that you can give where like that influenced the company maybe?
There is a lot of research done on that, on the brain. And when you're in a situation, perhaps most of us, I think, have experienced a situation where you find yourself reacting inappropriately big or large reaction to a situation or a question or a discussion that you get confused by. Why am I reacting this strong? I get really angry or upset in some way. And usually that is because something in the social context of that situation has triggered you into defense, to defending yourself. And that is because our brains are constructed for actually kind of see and be prepared for danger and to defend ourselves from that. And if you haven't experienced it yourself, you might have seen someone else, and you kind of try to say to someone, well, just get a grip on the situation. If you think logically about this, you might see that there is reason behind me saying like this, for instance, and the person won't take reason. Well, that's probably because something scared or disturbed the person, so that the brain stops working in the best way. And that is crucial for understanding that what needs to be done in that situation is just to kind of know that there is a reason for this big reaction, and then try to calm the situation down first. Now I forgot what you asked me. What was the question, Eva?
I asked about those situations where you can't be curious, as you said before.
Yeah, exactly. And the first thing that actually goes out the window when that happens, when our brains react, that is the function that is tuning in to someone else, to kind of read the other person and be curious and want to explore and want to know more, because we get kind of locked down. And then there is not much room for doing good stuff together, being creative and inventing new things or things like that. So that's really common.
And that sounds, sorry.
I've seen this in all kinds of teams or situations, from really, really experienced, well-educated persons in the work life, and they get kind of thrown off by the reactions between people. And that's because we can't, the social aspects of this are much more present than what research from further away has experienced, kind of. Does that make sense? Am I saying it in a clear way?
Yeah, I think so. And there we can, if I could, what do you say, like formulate that. If you say that like your creativity becomes worse, then that seems to have like a big impact on the startup as well.
Definitely.
And the work they can create together.
Yeah, exactly. And you asked about the way you look at people when this happens. If you it's kind of like, when that happens, that takes up all the space. And of course, the best way, the most efficient way I find is to kind of find ways to not get into to stay on the ways of working that is good for you, because that makes conflicts shrink and perhaps even disappear. So if you are able to keep your curiosity to people and be interested, you might actually kind of slow that reaction process down a bit. You can use your conscious mind to try to slow that process down.
Do you have any like tricks on how like you can become more like conscious or aware of the things that work well, or the positive things?
Yeah, you can start by being, of course, now we're talking about interaction and eventually about leadership of things. And the first thing that needs to be kind of handled when it comes to leadership is first to try to lead yourself, to understand yourself and lead yourself. And my trick there is to use your curiosity on yourself. Try to be not as judgmental to yourself that we usually are. We are really used to being humble and kind of talk ourselves down. Try to be more curious. Just wonder how am I set up, kind of, and try to pay attention to the reactions in your body to try to find out if you are about to go into a scared state. I have my own experience from being really, really observant to myself when I am, because of course I, as well as any other person, gets upset from stuff. But I'm trying to listen to my body and realize what happens to me when I am about to be upset. And the first thing that happens that is a really, really subtle reaction. It is that in my tongue, the edges of my tongue back here starts to kind of tingle a bit. And seconds after that, maybe half a second after that, I get a dry mouth and metallic taste in my mouth. That goes really, really quickly. And when I'm that observant, I can catch that really early and then try to get a grip of the situation and think, oh, what's about to happen? Something is upsetting me. And then I can use my, try to relax and calm down so I won't get upset. So that's my trick nowadays.
That's so interesting that you can like see it in the body and like actually feel it, that it's like actual physical things that happen, like just because like you get into this threat mode.
It's a clue. You can find a clue. The body is telling you something is about to happen. And it's only about to happen, you haven't gone that upset yet, then you can still control it. Because the trick is, of course, not to get to talk too much or get too caught up in problems, but actually try to strengthen yourself and do stuff that you're good at and be a confident, strong person.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I would like to go back to because we want to talk about teams as well, and what makes successful teams. What would you say is like the secret behind successful teams?
Well, there is, you need to, in teamwork, especially in small companies and small teams, you need to surround yourself with people that you like and function well together with. That's one thing. But on the other hand, you need to surround yourself with people that are not like you, that actually complements you and bring something to the table that you don't. And that can be kind of tricky, because the people I like is often the people that are like me, so to speak. So that's a balance to manage that. The trick there is kind of finding a good communicative climate. And ultimately, I think it's about trust. Trust is a really, really, really important aspect of teamwork and being efficient in teamwork. Because, of course, teamwork can be nice and pleasant and, comfy, but we want it to be effective too, not only nice. And then trust is, I would say trust is the most important ingredients.
Have you been in a situation where they failed to create trust? And what happened then?
Yes, I have. For example, when it comes to the big question, why are we doing things? I've been in teams where you agree with each other on the goal, where you want to go and what you want to accomplish, but you forgot to discuss why. Why do I want to go there? So even though the team members had the same goal, they didn't know what were the motivation factors for each team member. And that can create kind of a distrust. If I say it like this, we want, you and I have a company together and we want to accomplish something. We want to grow this big and have this many employees, and we want to develop a special technology. And you want to do it because you want to be a part of saving the world or make the world a better place. And I want to do it because I want to make a lot of money. And our colleague wants to do that because the technology development is so fantastically interesting. And we want to go to the same place, but you might start to distrust me because well, aren't you only in it for the money? Well, yeah, maybe I am. And that can be okay if we can speak about that, so we know, so we can trust each other, and we can agree on, well, what is okay to do and what's not okay to do and stuff like that. And I have seen close by. I've seen companies kind of get caught up in that distrust, but that can be fixed. And
how can that be fixed?
And that's a combination of people actually being clear to each other, saying what they think, and being, explicit about, speak their mind, show who they are and what they think. And on the other hand, then also listen to each other, try to be perceptive to other people's views. And the dialogue there usually can at least clear things up in a good way.
So it's all about communication skills and being clear.
Yeah, and be brave enough to be clear. You can do that and still be considerate to other people, but you can still be clear. It's quite common that when you sense that there is distrust or conflict is about to rise, you get less clear because you're afraid to actually escalate the conflict. But that usually leads to more distrust. So try to be clear, but also curious and listen to other people. That curiosity is the clue. I for myself, I try to activate my curiosity. When I find that I'm about to be a bit defensive and feel threatened about something, I try to consciously activate my curiosity. Tell me more. You think like that. I think differently. Please tell me more about what you think. How come? Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. And that way I can kind of get my defensiveness handled. Stay optimistic.
So that's something that we should emphasize for all the people who are listening now, that like, if you get in a situation like that, you will probably react in a way that you get like more unclear, but that you actually have to become aware and conscious of that. Like the way out is probably that you become more clear.
Yeah. You can be, it's okay to be a bit, to find it difficult and to struggle with your words when you are trying to be clear, but try, because usually people are kind of forgiving when it comes to not using the perfect word or something like that. And ask questions if you see that someone is not understanding you right. Ask them what they thought were difficult to understand. Asking questions is almost always good. And
they are, of course, in a curious way and not in a like judgmental way.
Of course, exactly.
We actually got a question from one of our listeners. The question is, based on your experience working with people and startups, what kind of attitude, environment, or benefit motivates and brings out the best in employees in the early stage of a startup?
What did you say? What attitudes or what
attitude, environment, or benefit motivates and brings out the best?
Benefits. I think, first of all, to try to be in an attitude where you kind of let people make mistakes. You need to encourage people to try stuff. And if they do that and fail, be generous about, well, you tried and that's a good thing. Let's handle the failure together, kind of. So you're including people in the effort to try to find your way, because the way forward is, from what I've seen in startups, it's almost always two things. It's quite unclear and it's constantly changing. So you have to kind of relocate all the time. And then you need to be in a climate where you promote stuff, good stuff, as much as you can, and the climate benefits from that. Am I answering the right question, do you think?
I didn't ask the question, but I think it sounds like a good answer.
Yeah.
But like you said that in the startups that like you should be forgiving if people make mistakes.
Yeah.
How does that, like, since in startups you have so few people and you really need to like be able to know that, okay, this task that I give to you, that you will take responsibility for it and that it doesn't come back to me.
Yeah.
So how can you create this environment and be forgiving if like a mistake could be kind of fatal for the startups? Are there like any ways how you can implement that without risking
bigger consequence? Yeah. Well, yeah, try to, again, it's about communication and dialogue, because try to stay in sync with each other. You're absolutely right about that. You need to be, maybe forgiving is kind of too a blurry word in that sense. You need to be open to the possibility that when someone is trying something, it might go wrong. But if you're in sync with each other, to talk to each other a lot and try to keep up with each other and what you're doing, then you can find a way to handle the consequence. It gets difficult if you are not in sync and something happens, a consequence suddenly appears that you were not at all aware of. That can happen, of course, but the good way to avoid that is to communicate as much as you can. And be quick on your feet in that.
Yeah, I think it's really like really important that but at the same time, like, you don't want to become like a micromanager. So like it really seems like to be like a balance, but it all comes back to communication.
Yeah.
It seems. Yeah. How talking about communication, you already said that like you have to, I mean, of course, to be forgiving, but then at the same time you should be like clear about what you're expecting and have a clear communication.
Yep.
And something that I think is like really important here to talk about is feedback.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on feedback? Like, what comes to your mind?
First of all, that feedback is a way to stay in contact with each other, and contacts are absolutely essential to feel seen and to be able to see others and really try to get them to understand them. And then feedback is a really good thing to use. But feedback can also be, well, you can be really vulnerable when you get feedback. You can be anxious about that or try to find it difficult. So you need to kind of find a way to, feedback can be really hard if you're not doing it right, if you're doing it from a too critical point of view. So you need to find the meaningful conversation, might be a better word. Feedback is good if you can manage it, but if you find that difficult, try to have meaningful conversations to each other. Feedback can be kind of, feel a bit big and difficult. I love feedback. I try to be really generous with feedback too, mostly the positive feedback. But if I do that, I give myself kind of opportunity to also address difficult stuff.
Yeah, is there like, or like you said, like you should give feedback in the right way. Is that like the way that you give like positive feedback and then like negative feedback, or like constructive feedback, or like how do you give like good feedback?
Yeah, you can. There is a lot of tips on that, but the most important thing I think is to first of all be aware that you need to say things in a way that the other person is able to hear and take in, and then you need to try to tune into who you are speaking to. Try to actually figure them out and be considerate when you tell them stuff. So, okay, what's the difference between being considerate and then you risk, the risk is you might be unclear. So that's a balance. But if you can use a good way of speaking from your own experience, try to avoid telling people, oh, Eva, you are such a blah, blah, blah. Kind of giving someone the truth about something that's usually very hard to take in. You can, instead of saying that, you can say, yeah, but when you do that thing that you do, it makes me feel kind of uncertain of you, or something like that. Tell them how you experience the situation, and then ask a question. Okay, the thing I just told you, what do you think about that? How does that make you feel? So you can get a dialogue started.
Yes, feedback on the feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of try to get the person to tell you back what they heard, so you can get nuanced and oh, okay, you heard it like that, I meant like this, and then get the conversation going.
Mm. And this is like an interesting topic, I think, because like I have been in situations where like I said something that was totally clear, but like the other person like totally understood it differently. Yeah. And I think that's also like with some people that you just click. You work so well together without having to talk about like specific things.
Yeah.
But then like if you like work with people that are like quite different from you, you kind of need to like set the frames for the like how can we work together, like to set like the same, so that you have the same understanding of things.
Yeah.
How does that what would you say, like influence or like influence the like startups?
Yeah, first of all, you need to give that some time to actually speak. Sometimes it can be difficult to kind of find the words to do that. And when I work with teams, I can help, because I have models and communicative models that I can use to explain something or kind of highlight differences for people. It's easier sometimes when you're not a part of the team. But I think if you're not at lead and have a business coach, that might help you do that. You can use someone else, just an external person that kind of works with the team and help them notice and see where there might be differences. Sometimes it's complicated, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's obvious if you just give it a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm. And they're like because you said before that like there are different like types of people, and you said you yourself, you're like an extrovert. How is that also related? Like, for example, introverts, are they more that I don't know, they see like situations as more threatful than others, or like something like that it can like have an impact?
Yes, it can, but that's a good example of how people can be different. do you want me to? Can I tell you a bit about extroverts and introverts? That's a good example. And when I learned about the extroverts and introverts, I did that mostly from when I learned about the Myers-Briggs tool. That is kind of a theoretical aspect on differences between people. An extrovert is a person who has a preference for being with other people, interacting with other people. So both communication or interaction is kind of directed outwards towards other people, and you also get your energy from other people, being in interaction with other people, and you like to talk about things and try things and then kind of do stuff and then think about them later. But a person with a preference for introversion can be as communicative and reflective, but turns that reflection and communication mostly inwards towards themselves. Use yourself and your own mind to reflect on things, and likes to reflect rather than interact. And they also get their energy from when they need to kind of recover from something hard. They use themselves and to be on their own to get more energy. And of course that influences how that person is in a teamwork, if you're an extrovert or an introvert. And if you are, I worked with a couple of project managers not at Lead, at a different job, and that they got into a really difficult situation. They got in conflict with each other because when the first one, the one that were at the office earliest in the morning, he sat down on his chair and he was an introvert, so he wanted to plan the day in the calendar, and he wanted to think about what he was about to do. And then the other person that was an extrovert came in, and he started to talk immediately. What are you going to do today? And blah, 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 about everything. And they got so irritated at each other, and both ones thought that the other one was disrespectful. So they got into conflicts. And when they understood that one of them needed kind of alone time and the other one needed to discuss, they could fix that. They found a way to plan that so they weren't in a conflict anymore. It was super important for their cooperation.
That's nice, because I just wanted to ask, like, is there a way to like get extroverts and introverts to like work well together?
There are a lot of ways to do that. It's definitely not a lost cause if you're an extrovert and an introvert. And I think even though if you're not at all comfortable or know something about the theories, try to explain to each other how would you like the workday to be? What do you like? And try to kind of, see the other one's point of view. And you can also practice to use a way of thinking or behaving that is not the most natural for you. That can be good for you to try to, develop something new.
We actually got a question from the audience.
Yeah.
And I will read it out. It's quite a text. I recognize the strong reaction you talked about in the beginning, both in myself and others. For me, it is often triggered by many small irritating issues, which each by themselves does not feel like a big deal and not worth bringing up to a serious discussion. But together they add up. Of course, it would be good to talk about it before the frustration grows big, but it's often not a good situation exactly when the irritating issue arises. For example, in a public meeting or a stressful moment.
Yeah.
Do you have tips on how to iron out small issues that feel too tiny by themselves for a big talk?
That's a real
introvert.
It's from an introvert.
Yeah.
Well, no matter if you're an extrovert or introvert, that is a really good question. I think I've been in that situation thousands of times. The thing that if you were to give feedback or kind of a reaction on each and every one of those small things, it would only get difficult or irritating for both parties. But the thing is that what you are describing is actually that you see a behavioral pattern that irritates you. And if you kind of, well, you use the helicopter perspective and not, first of all, you're absolutely right. Don't give feedback when you are irritated or angry, because it's not feedback then, it's a conflict. That's a totally different matter. So try to, first of all, do it when you're kind of balanced. And then you might say to someone, well, there is a thing that I need to speak to you about. I have noticed that there is a behavioral pattern. I see that you often do whatever it might be. You get into meetings 5 minutes late, and when you get there, you haven't prepared, or your notes were at home, or whatever the thing is. If you kind of say it in a way that you are addressing the behavioral pattern that you see, and you try to explain, this influences me. I have difficulties accepting this because it causes consequences for me. Then you can explain that, and you can be a bit more clear. As I said in the beginning, try to be clear but respectful, and ask, did you know this? Or I wanted to tell you this because I wanted to let you know. How can we together try to solve this situation? Because the thing that is happening is that there is this irritation stuff getting into your relationship. And it's no longer about the details. It's about the fact that there is irritation between you two. And that can be addressed. But you need to do that. You need to kind of take that seriously and, well, prepare for the conversation, and then try to be as explorative. I used the word curious before. Try to be curious about the other person, but curious is also a word that is really positive, and it might be difficult to be curious to someone that is irritating you, but you can try to think that you could try to understand better. I want to know the reason why you are acting this way, because that interest in actually trying to figure the other one out can be the key to resolving that situation.
Mm. Mm.
Long answer to a long question.
Yeah, but really, really necessary to hear, I think.
And it's super common that you described.
Yeah, because it really depends on like which like battles to pick, or like, is that maybe even two different things? Like it doesn't mean that like you don't have to pick this battle, but that you like, instead of like talking about small things that happen, to like see if there's a pattern, and then talk about the like pattern.
And try to you need to do what you said. You need to pick your battles, but if it is possible, try to kind of decode it, not think about it as a battle, because if you go into the situation in a battle mode, you will get a battle. If you go into the situation and say, I realize here is something, there's something difficult happening, and I need to understand what the hell it is, because I want to fix it. And if I need to understand it to fix it, then I need to listen to you, because if I don't, I won't understand it. So then you have kind of changed the whole dynamic.
Before we go like forward, I just want to say that everybody who's listening, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them. We only have 10 minutes left. So if you want them to be answered, then make sure that they will be asked before we finish the webinar. Something that I'm curious about is because, I mean, of course, this is like about startups and like entrepreneurs. And as an entrepreneur, and as you said before, like in startups, everything is kind of unclear and like always changing. How is that like, or what kind of requirements does that set on the people in the startup and your mindset? Because I can imagine that that is kind of like a risky situation that's like could be interpreted as a threat. How what do you think about that?
Well, I would say I think for anyone that is going into the both wonderful but also challenging situation that it is to start a new business, you need, if you're recruiting for example, for that, look for people that are kind of confident in themselves, that are confident that they can handle challenges. They don't need to be super tough or know everything or be hyper competent, but it's a good thing to kind of be prepared to be calm and stable in various situations. If you are a very nervous or anxious person, you will need, that is possible to be, but then you need to have people around you that support you to a higher degree. So be aware of that. And if you are one of the nervous or anxious people and are already in a startup, try to actually don't be a hero and not tell anyone that you're anxious. Tell them and use other people around you to try to navigate and understand the situation better. Teamwork and the feeling of we're in it together are a super power when it comes to handling difficult things.
Mm-hmm. And there, I guess we come back to like, I mean, that we are social beings, that we are like meant to be in groups. And
Yes.
like, they're like, as you said, I guess that, like feeling that in this situation where you are maybe afraid or feel like you're anxious, that you have the team behind you, that is very important.
Yeah, and it is both for extroverts and introverts for that matter. Even if you're an introvert person, you need to have other people around you, but on your own conditions. But you're absolutely right about that. We are social creatures. The thing that can scare us out of our minds is small, subtle indicators that we are about to be excluded. That's what we are super sensitive about in a way that we might not be aware of. Someone is kind of looking at you in a strange way, or when I'm coming with a suggestion or an idea, someone is just, small. That's not that big of an issue, but it scares our social minds restless.
And that's really something that we have to be aware of, because I think there was like a study where like they measured the like brain activity of like pain, where it was like physical pain has the same like kind of reaction as social pain.
Same areas of the brain, and to the same intensity are activated from really strong physical pain and mental pain. Emotional pain. Someone says something really awful to you that you are, and you can be super sensitive about something that, someone said something ugly to you when you were a child, and you're super sensitive to that kind of word, and trigger this really strong sense of pain. You're absolutely right. And social context that's research studies from, like I said, 10, 12, 15 years ago that shows that we are so much more vulnerable to social threats than we have understood before. There's a good model that is called the SCARF model, SCARF, that you can Google. That's a super good model for understanding our social brain.
And in like how it reacts to like threats, or
it explains 5 perspectives of social context where we are extra vulnerable and are in risk to be activating our defense mode. And you will, most of you will, there is recognition there when you look at that model, I think. I love it.
Yes. Okay, I think we have to like kind of wrap it up.
Yeah.
I think it was like super interesting hearing you talk about these different like issues and also answering questions from the audience, hopefully helping some of our listeners to become better at communicating and acting in teams. How would you yourself like summarize the things we talked about? Do you have like some like tools you want to emphasize specifically that like our listeners can should look up or work with in order to become better at communicating and working in teams?
Yeah, the best tip I have or trick is find ways to be nice to yourself and to others. Actually, it sounds soft and fluffy, but to encourage yourself and kind of, well, I'm a good person, I'm trying really hard and I'm doing good stuff, and the things that you are good at and that you like, let them grow bigger. Don't look at your weaknesses too much, or try to figure out how to handle negative things. Try to be as much as you can in the feeling of being strong, positive and confident.
And I think I also want to summarize some things that I thought were like really interesting that you talked about, which are the don't give feedback when you're irritated.
Yeah.
Yes. And be clear when you feel threatened, because the first reaction is to become unclear.
Yeah.
So that is also, I think, really interesting, and as you talk a lot about self-leadership, and I think that's what you normally say, like self-leadership is about becoming aware, right?
Yeah.
And so that's become aware of when you feel threatened.
Yeah.
And then also the part that you should become aware of when you're getting triggered, like trying to find these different physical sensations that happen in your body so that you can react in a better way.
Yeah, and the thing that you need to focus on when you find them is, when you find them, immediately try to balance and calm yourself down. Don't think about, oh, I need to be smart or say the perfect word. The key is balance yourself and try to calm yourself down. That's the thing.
And do you have a tip on how to calm yourself down in a situation like that? Or what do you normally do?
Well, first of all, be quick, because when I get that tingling sensation, that's really, really early in my process. And when it's early in your process, you can still use if you are a nerd for the brain and the brain functions, you can still use the logic thinking that is just behind your forehead and try to, okay, it's about to happen something dangerous, I need to calm myself down. But then in that early stage, that function actually functions. If you're not that quick, you need to kind of use your breathing to calm yourself down, or if you're a difficult situation, try to get out of it. Try to take a walk or go into the bathroom for 5 minutes to calm yourself down. Give yourself some space.
And last but not least, the most important one, not only for startups, but also for good teams and like communication. Be curious and see things from a positive perspective.
Yeah.
Would you agree on me that that's the key?
Yes, absolutely. That's the key. You will send signals if you're mad or threatened. Try to be curious, and you will send an open, more interested signals to your surroundings. And that's good for you. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Thank you, Åsa, so much for this interview today. It was really interesting talking with you about this topic. And I hope that we inspired some of you out there to become better at communicating and giving feedback and seeing the triggers when you get threatened. And hopefully that will have a good, impact on not only your private life, but also your companies or startups or whatever you are working with.
And the thing is that this is the way to get results. Like it's nice to have a nice team, but the thing is to get results out of your team and succeeding in your business.
Exactly, because it's the people that make the business, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Nice. That was a good end. And I think we'll finish there.
Yeah.
For the ones who are interested about the next startup talk, we will publish that soon on our social media. So check out our Instagram or Facebook for the next event.